Welcome back, everybody, to D'Angelo Unfiltered. I am your host, Doyle D'Angelo. We will be shifting to an audio only format for this channel as we also look to do journalism and investigative pieces about what we're seeing happening in the world. Of course, the main thing that we'll be talking about is in the tech field, right? And how technology is shaping and shifting the world around us in real time. There are implications to this. There are things that we don't know. And it's very important that we have journalists out there who are doing the work of a watchdog and making sure that these corporations don't grab too much power to the point where we have nothing to say about it. Now, it was announced in early June that Google.org, Google's philanthropic entity, would be expanding its support for skilled trades via a $50 million infusion that goes toward the training of experts. Their work will support 14 labor unions and 4 trade and contractor associations, with a focus on building and sustaining the data centers behind the advancement of AI. The investment coincides with an endorsement of 8 policy proposals on workforce development, with Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger telling Axios that Google's investment in training is the kind of partnership that helps to close the skills gap. Ultimately, that skills gap is being stretched by Google themselves and other tech giants. The development of the workforce here means reshaping the workforce in their image, which ultimately serves their purpose. Their focus is maintaining and building data centers. So, once again, a chess move to expand the amount of people who can support their structure. It closes the skills gap and could simultaneously narrow the labor market. And look at that $50 million figure. I mean, it's $50 million. That sounds like a big number, right? For a normal person or a local union, that is an astronomical and generous sum of money. But really, it is a minuscule allocation of resources that not only benefits them more than the skilled workers they will train, but it also lags behind the billions upon billions of dollars that they and other tech giants have and are looking to invest in data center infrastructure. Spending $50 million to win the favor of 14 labor unions, possibly shape federal workforce policy, and pose themselves as philanthropic in the headlines is high ROI for them. Essentially, pennies are being spent to protect and grow hundreds of billions of dollars in capital expenditures. How often might we find that philanthropy really isn't for the sake of philanthropy? What is also called a skills gap is really an externalization of an internal tech problem. They've turned, we need more workers to build our infrastructure, into, we are trying to fill the skills gap. Meta mirrored this in early June when they announced the launching of a new academy focused on giving skilled trade training to professionals at no cost to them, and a guaranteed job upon graduation in Meta's pipeline. Dina McCormick, president and vice chairman at Meta, said it best. She says, we can't create the infrastructure that we need if we don't have the electricians, the fiber technicians, etc., etc. Rachel Peterson, VP of Data Center Strategy at Meta, says that America needs hundreds of thousands of skilled tradespeople, electricians, mechanics, fiber technicians, and this program creates a pathway into those careers. This is only partially true. because the need for these jobs is solely driven by the hyperscaling behavior of tech companies. Once again, making a tech problem a national problem for their own aims. So, yes, workers are paid to learn. There is zero cost, which is great, no college debt, and a quick certification with a guaranteed job. But calling this a step in the right direction is questionable. Does all of this sound a bit familiar to anyone? Is there anyone out there who has a good grip on history? They say history repeats itself. Think of the Industrial Revolution. Society shifted from an agrarian rhythm into an industrial one, where wages were higher and workplace standards shifted. The offer was new life, new possibility, and better financial stability. It's hard to say what will happen, so this is not a statement, but genuinely a question. It's fair to ask what happens when the forecasted decline in jobs crosses paths with a workforce that is condensing into more skilled labor jobs that support tech infrastructure. What does this do to the scale and distribution of political and corporate power? What does this do to white collar jobs? Are other jobs created as a byproduct of this shift? Or does the workforce genuinely shrink and narrow down, causing strain on the individuals within the workforce to find a living? In the 20th century, a corporation's power was somewhat checked by its dependency on a massive human workforce. If you needed to scale your business, you had to hire thousands of people. You had to give them healthcare and you had to manage their collective bargaining power. But things are changing. When cognitive jobs are automated into agentic workflows, that operational reality diminishes. The circle of power becomes concentrated within a group of executives and architects that own the computation. The value of owning chips The value of owning AI models in data centers skyrockets and becomes the ultimate source of leverage, not just over the market, but the world. Think about it. Corporations can scale their output without increasing their human headcount. There is no democracy to be managed within the company. The domestic labor market becomes quite narrow for these companies, and they really answer mostly to their investors and the ones who run the system. And the biggest thing to recognize here is that these companies are forever embedded in our infrastructure. We're talking banking, healthcare, logistics, information, distribution. So, just like water and gas are vital to the functioning of society as we know it, really part of the lifeblood of society's functioning, these tech companies are becoming akin to private utilities and sovereign nation states. I'll explain this a bit more later. Earlier, I did ask what this does to white collar jobs. And I think a good way to look at it is through the lens of blue collar jobs and what we can expect here in the near future. If digital intelligence becomes the cheap and infinite commodity, then the physical infrastructure becomes the ultimate decision maker regarding how tech scales. You can write the most brilliant AI software in the world, but if an electrician hasn't wired the high voltage transformer or a specialized welding crew hasn't secured the cooling pipelines, well, then your software is useless. This means extreme leverage for skilled trade workers politically and economically. Because if a union of 5,000 data center electricians or utility line workers goes on strike, they can shut down a factory floor and essentially veto the processing of the digital sphere itself. This is why we talked earlier about why these companies are doing philanthropy. It's simple supply and demand. If the workers you need to create these data centers are limited in quantity, then they become expensive. If you can flood the market and train the exact workers you need for your projects, you can decrease wages and lessen the potential for unionization. Ultimately, America is facing an identity crisis at the moment. The modern political center was built entirely on a stable, tax paying, white collar middle class, analysts, project managers, coordinators, administrators. If labor truly condenses into tech infrastructure, the tax base and social stability of our nation will face extreme pressure. And the direction that we're headed is inevitable. Once we enter the process of recursion, the system becomes too interdependent to be reduced back to its previous form, meaning we have to manage. For nations of all shapes and sizes to survive globally, they now need AI infrastructure for cybersecurity, defense, and competitiveness economically. But the state isn't building these tech systems, big tech is. If the two are aligned, makes little difference because the source of power is not necessarily on the government side. With this being the case, political leaders are incentivized to grant tech companies what they want in the form of environmental deregulation for power grids, shifting public education dollars to feed into corporate tech pipelines, or even offering massive tax shelters. The line between where the government ends and the corporate infrastructure begins completely blurs. But this is nothing new or novel to tech itself. This is capitalism and lobbying behavior, but maybe reaching a new form. And the one thing we have to take a peek into, which would be a defense for the expansion of the tech space, is that there is a such thing as creative destruction, which is a known historical phenomenon where old jobs are destroyed, but new ones are birthed and entirely new industries are created as well. That is happening now, but the flavor is different than it was before. Remember, automation narrows the labor market. Most of the human labor shifts to managing these systems, ensuring their output is correct and ethical. The human in the loop is the main job for many industries. You'll always need people in healthcare, law, and aviation, for example, to watch what AI is doing because, well, these are highly sensitive fields. Then you have those who are charged with generating and cleaning up synthetic data, which is machine generated data used to train other machines. This is dangerous for a few reasons that we can't get into today, but there are examples of jobs being created, which is great, and it mirrors the Industrial Revolution. But it also differs because when machines took the place of our physical labor, we moved into more intellectual work. But with this transition, there is really no safety valve. In the 1900s, an agrarian farmhand could transition to a factory floor assembly line with relatively minimal training. The barrier to entry was low. Today, if generative AI eliminates 500 entry level marketing, paralegal, and administrative roles at a corporation, it might create maybe five new positions for advanced machine learning. Most of the displaced workers will not be able to cross that cognitive and educational bridge quickly enough to have value in the corporate market. These new jobs require highly specific, elite level technical synthesis. And on top of that, these new jobs are more efficient because of the integration of AI. So, as an estimation, if a company loses 100 employees to the AI boom, maybe they add five new high leverage jobs. Maybe even if it's 10 or 20, it is clear that our working system is a leaky cauldron. The middle class will continue to be squeezed, which means that there will be the hyper elite at the top and the general labor force at the bottom. The skilled tradesmen and the skilled trades jobs centered on human connection. The skilled trades and specialized jobs centered on human connection, things like therapy, nursing, hospitality, and the overall care economy. You could argue that this shift could push humans to be closer to each other because of how labor will shift, but we'll have to see because humans may have less choice over their profession in the future, forcing many into physical labor or entrepreneurship, right? Physical labor isn't something that many people would choose willingly, and entrepreneurship carries a lot of risk with it, which we'll get into a little bit later. But either way, the impact, of course, cannot be known now, and we can figure that this will be a major adjustment. Now, let's look into what some of these tech companies are doing and what type of partnerships that they're creating to impact the world or to lessen the blow of the proliferation of technology. Raise Us, a $500 million initiative launched by former Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo and former Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb, also backed by Anthropic and OpenAI's foundation, aims to assist employers and state bodies in the preparation of workers for an AI economy. Corporate participants who will be funding the initiative includes a list of educators, philanthropists, and state governments, along with the big players like Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, Eli Lilly, and Bank of America. As they try to reach $1 billion dollars in funding, Raise Us will be supporting a startup accelerator for laid off workers who aim to start their own business. And they will be providing paid years of work for high school graduates looking to take a path toward AI resilient careers. They want this system to be replicable for states and employers across the nation. Looking through the website for Raise Us, the mechanisms of a coalition like this is unclear and vague. It's fair to ask what the structure of this startup accelerator is. And paid service years to high school graduates means grooming the youth for AI resilient roles. I mean, that sounds nice, but what is classified as an AI resilient career? Who and what defines that? And what is part of this playbook that they wish to use as a template for states and employers? Raise Us is a meta organization, meaning it does not actually build or run these accelerators or service years for high school students. They raise the capital from tech giants like OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft, and other philanthropies, then distribute those funds to specific state governments to scale and pilot local programs. The name of the game here is reemployment and providing a safety net fund for displaced white collar and industrial workers who have been laid off due to automation. They receive a stipend combined with seed capital and access to enterprise AI tools. The accelerator will look to train these individuals to use AI as solo operators or as consultants or as owners in their local community. They say that success is measured by real outcomes like employment, earnings, and career advancement. The timelines, though, are not yet presented. So we can't yet determine whether or not these startups will have enough time to display true market fit. And we also don't know how earnings will be tracked and balanced against expenses. But typically, government based grants of this nature last for about 90 to 180 days. Keep in mind that a business owner is counted as an employee. because they are self employed. To be officially counted as unemployed, a person must be jobless, actively looking for work, and available to take a job. The moment a laid off worker joins a startup accelerator, though, the moment they register a sole proprietorship or an LLC and begin trying to find clients, they are legally classified as self employed. So, in national labor metrics, the self employed are grouped directly under the employed category. This is precisely how the system can hide structural unemployment. If a displaced worker is scraping by making only $400 a month doing freelance AI consulting through their new LLC, they are completely removed from the official unemployment rate. They don't show up as a casualty of the tech transition. So, when we gain more clarity on what success actually looks like for initiatives like Raise Us, we need to see how successful these solo operators are and will be in the long term, or else these people are just stranded. 90% of startups fail over a 10-year period. One out of every five fail in the first year. 50% fail by year five. Therefore, the problem here is that there are no explicit safeguards or long term safety nets for these business owners once their initial pilot funding runs out. If the business collapses in a time, let's just say year two or three for hypothetical purposes, the owner hits a wall. In most states, when an independent business owner closes their doors, they are not eligible for standard corporate unemployment benefits. Because they weren't paying into traditional state unemployment insurance as an employee, they are left with a fallen business, zero income, and no immediate safety net. And considering the math on failure rates, this is not ideal. There is no mention of a secondary safety valve or a retraining program for failed business owners. So, in this case, the market could eat them alive. An initiative designed to protect workers from the instability that comes with AI adoption is actively steering them into entrepreneurship, which is high upside and high agency, but is structurally the single most unstable and most unprotected legal status in the American economy. And in the same breath, the paid service year model for high school graduates provides private capital to steer more high school graduates toward tech infrastructure. The good thing here is that even though taxpayer dollars are going toward state run service years and apprenticeships, at least these graduates are being pushed into fields of high need and not strictly data center or tech jobs. That is genuinely a great thing. Although, with the narrowing of the labor market that we spoke of, are more people being pushed into jobs that are just not an actual fit for their nature, in turn causing more downstream stress from working a job that drains them? That's a fair consideration. Raise Us will start in Arkansas, Connecticut, Maryland, and Utah, where those local governments and policymakers will get with employers to test policies around wage insurance, policies around incentives given to companies for retraining rather than the laying off of workers, AI powered career coaching, and also credential programs. This is genuinely good for people who might experience a forced career transition due to AI. If an administrative coordinator, a retail manager, or an entry level tech professional is laid off because an AI agent automates their workflow, the wage insurance would close the gap between their new job that retrains them in AI literacy and the old one. So, say for example, if they made 60K, but the new one pays 40K, the insurance would cover part of it. Raise US is turning these workers into now underserved labor markets like healthcare and education. That is also really good. But maybe the world is just ironic by nature or contradictory by nature. But it still doesn't beat the fact that Anthropic and OpenAI are actively taking part in solving the safety net dilemma for professionals while also playing a direct hand and even needing one to begin with. It's like deliberately setting a house on fire and trying to fight the fire afterwards. It is wholly counterintuitive. But it does allow these companies to deploy agentic automation at scale while neutralizing the political and social pushback. Once again, it's PR at its finest. Create an image of helping the world while you actively distort it. It's also fair to point out that Raise Us is pushing short term credential programs and AI powered career coaching to rapidly transition people into the AI economy. But technology is moving toward software that can reason, synthesize information, and execute tasks autonomously. So that gives a short term credential in AI literacy a short term lifespan. You can retrain workers. That is all fine and dandy. But what outcomes does it lead to, and will it actually matter? Because the technology landscape is recursive and it expands faster than we can even integrate at this point. The educational curriculum is trying to keep up with an evolutionary process that is experiencing paradigm shifts. The infrastructure ordinary people are being trained to build and maintain today is explicitly designed to require fewer people tomorrow. And even a recent study of 23 million participants in the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Program found that retraining rarely moved workers into less automation exposed jobs. That just means that automation might be something that we cannot get away from because it's a recursive process. The more automation enters the system, the more things get efficient, and then the more automation that comes after that. All right. So we're getting towards the end here. This will be the last thing, and then we'll close out. So these tech giants, the major subjects of this podcast, are altering work tasks and tracking them with analytics. When Raise US launched, ADP, which is the giant payroll and workforce management firm, announced that it was joining as a founding member. ADP handles payroll and human resources data for over 1 million companies globally. In their official press release on launch day, ADP's CEO, Maria Black, stated, "Our data shows AI is reshaping work at the task level, creating new job categories even as it changes others. As the leader in workforce innovation, we have incredible data and insights that offer a unique lens into AI's impact on the workforce." Also, the official Raise US charter states that the platform will, quote, put AI to work directly, powering labor market analytics. Essentially, the companies that are the companies that are causing the changes are also gathering valuable data on the inner details. Raise US's model dictates that the corporate board members are not just donors, but also the strategists behind the modernization of the educational curriculum. The charter states Raise US will ask participating employers to help design and fund workforce transition pilots based on changes they are seeing in jobs, tasks, and recruitment. It will target the systemic gaps state and employer partners identify. This is important because the major partners of the model, like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Microsoft, deploy generative AI tools into the wild. Then these tools immediately begin automating specific cognitive tasks like data entry, scheduling, basic coding, drafting legal documents, and things of that nature. And they do this inside thousands of companies. And because ADP sits on the advisory board and processes data for millions of workers, their real time algorithms instantly flag which job categories are being diminished and which tasks are disappearing and where unfilled job openings are. For instance, they can instantly see that while administrative job postings are down 30%, postings for precision welders, grid technicians, and advanced manufacturing operators, the type of people that Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta need to create data center grids, are low compared to the demand for them. Instead of letting the open market slowly adjust, Raise US packages this data into their playbook and delivers it to their pilot governors, say like Wes Moore in Maryland or Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas. The state government then uses its public authority to alter community college funding. It uses it to speed up the acquisition of technical credentials and expands programs like the Maryland Service Year to route high school graduates and laid off workers into those exact corporate vacancies. The traditional economic model assumes that the government independently observes the job market and builds educational programs to help citizens. But under the Raise US model, the entities causing the economic disruption are the exact entities designing the public safety response. They write the software that displaces the worker. They use their data analytics to track the fallout of that. And then they advise the state government on how to reshape public education to fill their own industrial supply chain. If that does not sound like a closed loop, then I don't know what else to say. This is really just the start of the work here on this channel. The main point was to remove the video friction of this and to really focus the attention on the investigative journalism that needs to happen in this world, as I said in the beginning. It is my honor to be able to sift this information out and to deliver it to you. And if you are someone who really values the truth, if you're really someone who values accountability, and you care about how our culture, how our society, how civilization grows sustainably, then this will be the channel for you. We'll be back within a week or so with another piece of investigative journalism. So look forward to that. But until then, you can sit with this one, do some extra research, and really start to think about the different ways that these tech companies are using PR to mask some of the environmental and societal impacts that they are having and will have in the future.